President Trump has appointed Elliot Abrams special envoy to Venezuela. This guy's a disaster. The way he handled El Salvador is horrific. We need to watch him and what goes on in Venezuela. I became aware of the issues in El Salvador as a teenager because my friend's mother is Salvadoran community activist Isabel Cardenas. While at UC Berkeley in 1985, I had the ASUC declare the campus a sanctuary for all Central American refugees. In 2000, as council member, I had Mayor Burden declare Dia del Salvadoreño in Los Angeles. After the 2001 earthquakes in El Salvador, a group of us local leaders went down to El Salvador to provide aid. In 2003, I started the process for San Salvador becoming a sister city, and that was completed in 2005.
Elliot's passion for the rights and liberties of all peoples makes him a perfect fit and a valuable and timely addition.
If we look at a case like this, I think we have to start talking about putting Guatemalan and U.S. officials on trial. I think someone like Mr. Abrams would be a fit a subject for such a Nuremberg-style inquiry. But I agree with Mr. Abrams that Democrats would have to be in the dock with him.
Raymond Bonner, author of Weakness and Deceit, America and El Salvador's Dirty War, in a February 15, 2019 article for The Atlantic, recounts Elliot Abrams' role in El Salvador's dirty war.
I will never forget El Moisotan. Elliot Abrams shouldn't be allowed to either. What happened in 1981? And what did Abrams have to do with it? In El Salvador, the Reagan administration, with Abrams as point man, routinely defended the Salvadoran government in the face of evidence that its regular army and allied right-wing death squads were operating with impunity, killing peasants, students, union leaders, and anyone considered anti-government or pro-guerrilla. Abrams went so far as to defend one of the death squad's most notorious leaders, Roberto de Obusan, who was responsible for the murder of Archbishop Oscar Romero while he was saying Mass, in March 1980. I began reporting from El Salvador for the New York Times in December 1980. 4 American Roman Catholic church women had just been raped and murdered by Salvadoran soldiers, another heinous crime that the Reagan administration sought to cover up. 1 year later, I was smuggled by guerrillas into Morazan. I was accompanied by Susan Meselas, the photojournalist already well known for her work in Nicaragua. Simultaneously, but separately, Alma Guillermo Prieto of the Washington Post made her way into the area as well. When we reached El Moisotan, evidence of the massacre was still abundant. Skeletons were being picked over by vultures, the stench of death carried by the breeze. My reporting and Susan's pictures appeared in the Times, and Alma's reporting in the Post, in January 1982. Immediately, the administration attacked us and sought to deny the stories, calling them guerrilla propaganda. The reports were not credible, Abrams said. As Abrams put it, El Moisotan appears to be an incident that is at least being significantly misused, at the very best, by the guerrillas, so the murder of hundreds of children became a mere incident.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimony. Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
That
was not a question. I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
Committee can attack
on February
a witness
8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
That was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Moisotan, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you think that massacre was a fabulous achievement that happened under our watch?
That is a ridiculous question, and I
yes or no?
No.
I will.
Sorry, Mr.
I will take that as a yes.
I am not going to respond to that kind of personal attack, which is not a question.
Yes or no? Would you support an armed faction within Venezuela that engages in war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interest, as you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua?
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think this entire line of questioning is meant to be real questions, and so I will not reply.
Whether you, under your watch, a genocide will take place, and you will look the other way because American interests were being upheld, is a fair question. Because the American people want to know that anytime we engage a country, that we think about what our actions could be and how we believe our values are being furthered. That is my question. Will you make sure that human rights are not violated and that we uphold international and human rights?
I suppose there is a question in there, and the answer is that the entire thrust of American policy in Venezuela is to support the Venezuelan people's effort to restore democracy to their country. That's our policy.
I don't think anybody disputes that. The question I had for you is that does the interest of the United States include protecting human rights and include protecting people against genocide?
That is always the position of the United States.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
I want to say one more thing, and this is a bit ironic and a little controversial, but look, I am personally not in favor of the hijab, and so but that's obvious because my family's Muslim and I'm not Muslim anymore. I'm agnostic. I rejected all the religions. Okay, so if you said, "Hey, do you want your daughter in a hijab?" I'd say, "Under no circumstances." Okay, now that's my personal opinion, but ironically, seeing Representative Omar in Congress in a position of power, holding people to account that have never been held to account, and wearing a hijab doing it, made me proud to be an American. Because we have a free
exact thing while I was watching the video.
Yeah, because we have a free country, and not everybody has to agree with me, and not everybody has to agree with Trump or anyone else in power. She gets to have her own personal opinion and their apparel and religion and ideology, and there are a lot of people like her in this country, and now they have a voice. So it's a voice in a couple of different ways: Muslims, people who are more traditionally conservative in Islam, but socially liberal. And most importantly, a voice for our entire generation to hold people to account that are used to their arrogance and their ability to stomp over other people while not being questioned.